In June 2012, a young woman walked out of her home and never returned. 6 years later, when a dog suddenly barked and began digging beneath a patch of soil that seemed meaningless, police uncovered a horrifying truth, one so shocking that no one dared to believe it was real. That day seemed ordinary, but it quietly marked the beginning of an unimaginable tragedy. She left home with a familiar smile, carrying the dreams of youth, and then vanished without a trace. No message, no final goodbye, just a cold emptiness left behind for her family. Dozens of search campaigns were launched, yet every effort ended in silence. Until, one day, a dog led investigators straight to a secret that had been buried for 6 long years. Her name was Emily Carter, a 24-year-old woman who had grown up in the quiet suburbs of Fort Collins, Colorado. To those who knew her, Emily was a bright spirit, full of laughter, compassion, and a restless curiosity about the world. She had recently graduated from Colorado State University with a degree in environmental science, and she dreamed of working in national parks, protecting the very landscapes she loved to explore. Emily lived with her parents, Michael and Linda Carter, in a modest 2-story home on the edge of town. Their house, with its white porch swing and flower beds that Linda tended so carefully, was a place of warmth and security. Emily's younger brother, Daniel, often joked that Emily was the adventurous one in the family, the one who would trade comfort for wide-open skies and mountain trails at a moment's notice. Friends described her as dependable and kind-hearted. She volunteered at the local animal shelter on weekends, walking dogs and helping with adoptions. She loved music, often humming along to her guitar late at night, and she was always the first to organize hiking trips with her close-knit circle of friends. For Emily, nature was not just a hobby, it was where she felt most alive, most herself. The days leading up to her disappearance had seemed perfectly normal. She had recently been talking about a new job opportunity at a conservation nonprofit in Denver, something that excited her parents, but also made them nervous about her moving away from home. Linda remembered their last dinner together before Emily vanished. They sat around the kitchen table, eating her favorite meal, chicken casserole, and Emily spoke about her future with the kind of glowing optimism that made everyone else smile. There was no sign of trouble, no arguments, no financial struggles, no hidden shadows in her life. Emily wasn't dating anyone seriously at the time, though she had a wide circle of acquaintances from university and the hiking community. By all accounts, her life was steady, even joyful. On the morning of her disappearance, she left home wearing her usual hiking clothes, a light blue jacket, black leggings, and a well-worn pair of trail shoes. She carried a small backpack with a water bottle, some snacks, and her phone. She told her mother she planned to explore a nearby trail, just outside Fort Collins, a place she had visited many times before. Linda remembered kissing her on the cheek and saying, "Be careful, don't stay out too late." It was such a simple exchange, one that seemed routine at the time. No one could have imagined that it would be the last time Linda ever saw her daughter alive. Emily walked out the door that morning with dreams and plans, the same way she always had, but this time she never returned. The morning of the 14th of June 2012 began like countless others in Fort Collins. The sun rose gently over the Rocky Mountains, casting long golden beams across the rooftops of the Carter family's neighborhood. Birds filled the air with their songs, and the cool mountain breeze whispered of another perfect summer day. For the Carters, there was nothing unusual about that Thursday morning. Emily came downstairs just after 8 o'clock, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, wearing her hiking gear. She looked energized, as though the trail ahead was already calling her name. Over breakfast, she chatted lightly with her father Michael about the weather, noting that it seemed like an ideal day for a hike. Her mother Linda reminded her half-joking, half-serious not to wander too far off the main trail. Emily only laughed, reassuring her that she knew the paths better than anyone. At around 8:45 a.m., she slung her backpack over her shoulder, kissed her mother goodbye, and headed out the front door. She told Linda she would be back by late afternoon. It was a small promise, one she had made many times before, and Linda thought nothing of it. The last confirmed sighting of Emily came from a neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, who saw her walking briskly down the street toward her car, keys jingling in her hand. She waved, as she often did, and Emily waved back with a bright smile. It was such a fleeting moment, but it would later become etched in the neighbor's memory forever. Emily's destination that day was believed to be Horsetooth Mountain Open Space, a rugged but popular hiking area just west of Fort Collins. Friends said she often went there when she wanted solitude and quiet reflection. Surveillance cameras captured her car entering the parking lot at 9:22 a.m. She parked near the trailhead, locked the doors, and set off on foot. After that, the trail of evidence grew hazy. Several hikers later recalled seeing a young woman in a light blue jacket walking along the South Ridge Trail around mid-morning, but none could say with certainty that it was Emily. No photographs, no phone calls, no text messages marked her movements after she left her car. By late afternoon, when Emily had not returned home, Linda began to worry. She tried calling her daughter's phone, but each call went straight to voicemail. At first, she assumed Emily had lost track of time, something that happened occasionally on long hikes. But as the evening shadows lengthened and night began to fall, dread began to take root. By 9 p.m., the Carters drove to the trailhead themselves. Emily's car was still there, parked exactly as it had been that morning. The sight sent a chill through Linda's body. The vehicle was locked, her phone charger sat on the passenger seat, and there were no signs of forced entry. It was as if Emily had simply walked into the mountains and vanished. The family immediately alerted authorities. Within an hour, search and rescue teams were dispatched, sweeping the trails with flashlights and calling out Emily's name into the dark woods. Dogs picked up faint scents but lost them near a rocky overlook. Helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights combing through the rugged landscape, yet no trace of Emily was found. By dawn the next day, the search intensified. Dozens of volunteers joined the effort, combing through brush, checking creeks, and exploring hidden ravines. Every hour that passed without finding her deepened the nightmare. Linda clutched Emily's scarf, refusing to leave the trailhead, while Michael coordinated with police. There were no signs of a struggle, no abandoned belongings along the trail, no footprints clear enough to follow. Emily Carter had simply disappeared into the Colorado wilderness, leaving behind nothing but questions. For the Carters, that day would forever divide their lives into two parts: before Emily vanished and after. The first 72 hours after Emily Carter's disappearance were a blur of panic, urgency, and rising despair. Search and rescue teams worked day and night, scouring every corner of Horsetooth Mountain Open Space. Volunteers, friends, classmates, strangers who had only seen Emily's photo in the newspaper flooded the area, hoping against hope that she was still alive somewhere in the wilderness. At dawn on the second day, the command center at the trailhead buzzed with activity. Maps were spread across folding tables, radios crackled with updates, and tired officers briefed the teams heading out into the field. Every path, every overlook, and every creek bed within a 5-mile radius was carefully marked and searched. Helicopters hovered overhead, their blades thundering through the morning stillness as spotlights cut across dense forest. Search dogs were deployed, noses low to the ground, leading handlers through thickets and boulder fields. For a moment, there was hope, when one dog picked up a faint scent near the ridge. Dozens rushed to the area, combing every inch of ground. But after hours of searching, the trail evaporated as quickly as it had appeared, leaving nothing but frustration behind. The Carters stood vigil near the trailhead. Linda clutched her daughter's scarf in her hands, whispering silent prayers with every passing hour. Michael tried to remain composed, meeting with detectives, asking questions, demanding answers. Daniel, her younger brother, moved restlessly, wanting to join the search parties but forced by his parents to stay close. The community of Fort Collins rallied around them. Posters with Emily's smiling face appeared on lampposts, grocery stores, and gas stations. Social media flooded with pleas for information. Candlelight vigils were organized, where neighbors held hands, their faces lit by flickering flames, murmuring Emily's name into the night sky. But even with the outpouring of support, the investigation itself yielded little. Police examined her car thoroughly. No fingerprints out of place, no signs of forced entry, no blood or broken glass. Her backpack, phone, and keys had gone with her. Without them, there were no leads to follow. Detectives began to consider every possibility. Could Emily have slipped and fallen somewhere off trail, her body hidden by rocks or brush? Could she have been attacked by wildlife? Or darker still, could someone she knew, or a stranger lurking in the mountains, have been responsible for her disappearance? Each theory sparked new avenues of investigation, but each ended in silence. Witness interviews produced more questions than answers. A couple hiking that morning thought they saw a young woman in a light blue jacket near the ridge, but they weren't sure if it was Emily. Another hiker reported hearing what sounded like a woman's voice, calling out briefly in the distance, but the sound had faded too quickly to confirm. These fragments of testimony only deepened the mystery. As days turned into weeks, the search effort grew more strained. Volunteers dwindled, media crews packed up, and the once bustling command center grew quieter. Yet the Carters refused to give up. They walked the trails themselves, calling Emily's name until their voices cracked, leaving flowers and ribbons tied to tree branches as markers of hope. By the end of the first month, the official search was scaled back. Authorities classified the case as a missing person investigation, but privately, some admitted that without new evidence, Emily's trail had gone cold. For the Carter family, however, hope did not die so easily. Each sunset over the mountains reminded them that Emily was still out there somewhere. Each silence from the police only deepened their determination to keep searching, no matter how impossible it seemed. What began as a massive, organized rescue mission slowly turned into a haunting waiting game. And for 6 long years, the unanswered question remained the same. Where was Emily Carter? As the seasons changed and years slipped quietly by, the search for Emily Carter faded from the headlines, but it never faded from the hearts of those who loved her. What began as nightly news coverage and candlelight vigils slowly dissolved into a heavy silence that stretched over 6 long years. The Carter family lived each day in a strange rhythm of grief and hope. Her mother, Linda, kept Emily's room exactly as it had been, the bed neatly made, books stacked on the nightstand, her guitar resting in the corner. Sometimes she would sit on the edge of the bed, tracing the outlines of Emily's photographs, as if by holding on to the memories she could keep her daughter close. Her father, Michael, carried his pain differently. He threw himself into work, into routines, into anything that kept his mind busy. But late at night, when the house was quiet, Linda often found him sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair where Emily once laughed and talked about her dreams. Her younger brother, Daniel, grew up in the shadow of her absence. He graduated high school, went off to college, and yet every milestone felt incomplete without Emily there to celebrate. She should have been here, he often said, a phrase that became a quiet refrain in the family's life. Birthdays and holidays were the hardest. On Emily's 25th birthday, Linda baked a cake and lit a single candle, whispering a wish into the dark. Come home. Each year afterward, the ritual repeated, a bittersweet act of love, hope, and unbearable sadness. The police case had long since gone cold. Detectives were reassigned, files were boxed and stored, and no new leads surfaced. A few tips would trickle in. Someone thought they saw a woman who looked like Emily in another state, or a hiker found a piece of clothing near a trail, but every lead led to a dead end. The trail had gone silent, and so had the world's attention. Yet the Carters never let go. They organized small memorial hikes in Horsetooth Mountain, not as a way of mourning, but as a reminder that Emily was still part of the landscape she loved. Friends continued to send cards, notes, and messages, though less frequently as time went on. 6 years is a long time to live without answers. The silence became its own kind of torment, neither life nor death, just a question that never stopped echoing. And then, on an otherwise ordinary afternoon, that silence was broken. A dog wandered off the trail. It barked furiously at a patch of earth, and beneath that ground lay the secret the Carters had been waiting and fearing to discover. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in September 2018, when fate finally shifted. The mountains around Fort Collins were alive, with color-fiery reds and golds clinging to the aspen trees, a cool wind rustling through the branches. For 6 long years, the silence around Emily Carter's disappearance had weighed heavily on the community. But that day, silence was about to be broken, in the most unexpected way. A man named Robert Miller, a local resident, had taken his golden retriever, Scout, for a routine walk in the foothills just outside the very trails where Emily had vanished. Robert often let Scout roam ahead off-leash, trusting the dog's instincts but never imagining they would lead him into the heart of a 6-year-old mystery. As they reached a narrow, wooded ravine, Scout suddenly froze. His ears pricked, his nose quivered, and then he darted off the path, barking with a frantic urgency Robert had never seen before. At first, Robert assumed Scout had scented a rabbit or deer, but when the barking grew sharper, almost panicked, he hurried after him. There, beneath a cluster of fallen branches and half buried under soil and leaves, Scout had begun digging furiously. Robert's first thought was that it might be an animal carcass. But then, something metallic caught the sunlight. A fragment of fabric, and what looked chillingly like the edge of a shoe. Robert's chest tightened. He pulled Scout back and leaned closer. The ground gave off a smell he couldn't quite place, but that instinct told him was wrong. His hands shook as he dialed 911. "I think I've found something," he told the dispatcher. His voice cracked. "Something human." Within the hour, the ravine was crawling with law enforcement. Yellow tape cordoned off the area. Officers marked the perimeter, and forensic teams arrived in quiet, deliberate steps. Shovels broke into the earth as investigators worked carefully, brushing aside layers of soil, leaves, and roots. What they uncovered sent a jolt of horror through everyone present. Partial remains, tangled with remnants of clothing, emerged from the ground. A light blue jacket, tattered, faded, but unmistakably matching the one Emily Carter had worn on the morning she disappeared, was pulled carefully from the dirt. Nearby lay a backpack, crushed by years of earth pressing down on it, its zippers rusted shut. The scene was hushed, except for the occasional murmur of investigators. Even seasoned officers turned pale as the remains were carefully lifted and placed into evidence bags. Though formal identification would take time, no one doubted the truth. After 6 years, Emily Carter had finally been found. When the Carter family received the call, Linda collapsed into Michael's arms. The confirmation they had begged for, prayed for, and feared all at once had finally arrived. Their daughter had been discovered, but the discovery came not with relief, but with a new wave of grief and chilling questions. How had Emily ended up buried in that ravine, less than 2 miles from where she was last seen? Who had put her there, and why had no one found her sooner? The answers would not come quickly, but with Scout's discovery, the silence that had haunted the Carters for 6 years was shattered, and with that shattering, a new and more haunting mystery began. The remains discovered in the ravine were transported to the Larimer County Coroner's Office, where forensic experts began their meticulous work. Days turned into weeks as the analysis unfolded, but in the Carter home, time felt frozen. Each phone call from detectives made Linda's heart pound. Each pause in conversation left Michael bracing for the worst. The results were grim, but conclusive. The remains were indeed those of Emily Carter. Dental records and DNA confirmed what the blue jacket and backpack had already suggested. The young woman who had vanished into the Colorado wilderness 6 years earlier had finally come home, but only in fragments. Yet, the discovery raised more questions than it answered. Forensic testing revealed Emily's bones bore no signs of an animal attack or a deadly fall. Instead, subtle fractures hinted at blunt force trauma. The way the body had been concealed, buried beneath branches and soil in a remote ravine, pointed to human involvement, not accident. Someone had placed her there deliberately. Detectives began revisiting old leads. Former acquaintances, hiking companions, and even strangers who had been in the area during the time of Emily's disappearance were questioned again. A few names resurfaced, individuals who had once been considered but ruled out due to lack of evidence. Now, with the remains found, those alibis were scrutinized more closely. The community of Fort Collins was shaken to its core. People who had long whispered theories now spoke them aloud. Could Emily have trusted the wrong person on the trail that day? Was someone she knew hiding a terrible secret all these years? For the Carters, the confirmation of Emily's death was both a cruel relief and a new torment. They finally had an answer to the question that had haunted them, but the truth carried an unbearable weight. Linda wept as she folded away the scarf she had clung to for 6 years, whispering, "We found you, sweetheart, but not the way we prayed for." As detectives pressed forward, one thing became chillingly clear. Emily's disappearance had never been a tragic accident. It was a crime. And somewhere, perhaps closer than anyone imagined, the person responsible was still walking free. The discovery of Emily Carter's remains marked the end of one chapter, but the beginning of another far darker one. Her family finally had the heartbreaking certainty they had long been denied, yet the truth was incomplete. There was no clear suspect, no confession, no justice. Only fragments, bones, torn fabric, and unanswered questions remained in place of the vibrant young woman who once filled their lives with laughter. The investigation continued, but months passed without resolution. Forensic evidence provided direction, but not identity. Each lead seemed to dissolve into silence, and whispers of Emily's case once again slipped from the headlines. For the Carters, however, there was no slipping away. Every sunrise reminded them of the daughter who should have been alive to greet it. At Emily's memorial service, held beneath the same Colorado sky she had loved so dearly, friends and family gathered in quiet sorrow. Photographs of her smiling face lined the tables, and her favorite song played softly in the background. Linda spoke through tears, her voice breaking. "For 6 years we prayed for answers. We prayed for a miracle. We didn't get the miracle we hoped for, but we will carry Emily in our hearts forever, and we will not stop seeking the truth." Her words became a vow not only for the family, but for all who had followed Emily's story. The community, too, carried a renewed sense of unease. Somewhere out there, perhaps within their very midst, was someone who knew exactly what had happened on that June morning in 2012. The case remains a reminder of the fragile line between ordinary life and sudden tragedy. Emily's disappearance teaches us how quickly a routine day can turn into a nightmare, and how silence can stretch for years before the truth claws its way to the surface. To those who listen to her story, Emily's legacy is not just one of mystery, but of resilience, of a family who refused to stop searching, of a community that held vigil, and of a young woman whose light endures even in absence. And as the mountains of Colorado stand silent, they carry her story in their shadows, a haunting question, a call for justice, and a reminder to cherish the moments and people we hold dear, because tomorrow is never promised. If Emily's story touched you, please consider supporting Last Seen by subscribing to the channel so you never miss the mysteries we uncover. Your thoughts matter. Share what you believe happened in the comments below. And if you found this story meaningful, don't forget to leave a like. It helps us bring more untold stories to light.